Hello, welcome to a new episode of Women's Wellness with Dr. Dow. Tonight we're going to be chatting about Bone Up, your bone health and prevention of osteoporosis. As a woman, our bones are likely smaller and thinner than a man's, so that it may seem like osteoporosis is a part of aging, but it doesn't have to be. Don't take this news lying down. While it's true that bone strength and mass can decline with age, there are many things that you can do to lower your chances for bone weakness. Prevention is key because when bones are weak, it's easy for fractures to occur as well as bones breaking. There's no time like the present to make sure that your bones stay strong. We are so happy to have you join us tonight, Dr. Dow, and we're just really looking forward to you being able to share with us about what osteoporosis is and how we can get moving and how we can create a plan to fortify our bone health and body frame for the future, really. So let's jump into this. My first question for you is, can you explain to us what is bone density?
Well, first of all, to get there, I think we need to understand what bone is.
Bone,
Okay,
okay. So
everybody kind of know what bone is. Bone is, your arms, your legs, your shoulder joints, even your scalp is your bone, your spine, your hips, your ankles. These are basically, and everybody sees kind of like white, kind of calcium skeleton that actually holds up our body, which is kind of true in some ways. But I want to tell you that bone is not a static thing. Bone is actually a living organ system. Okay, so constantly the bone is like a scaffolding. It has a structure, and the cells that appends to it or grows or builds the structure continue getting reabsorbed, or sometimes we call it just broken down. And at the same time, they're building up at the same time. So in some ways, the bone cells are refreshing itself all the time. So after 60, 90, or even 180 days, you might be changing your bone. Your bone may not be the same exactly as before, even though they look the same to you.
Right.
They're totally different now.
Uh-huh.
So there are two types of cells. One is called osteoclast, and one is called osteoblast. Just think osteoclast with a C means to cut it down and to reabsorb. And as osteoblast just kind of blast new bones onto the structure. So one kind of breaks down and one kind of build it up.
Okay.
And bone cells that appends and connects itself into the structure, we call this the osteocytes. And then there's bone matrix where the osteocytes builds upon itself. It just builds up like a scaffold. So when we are younger, we tend to have a lot of osteoblast activity where we are building the bones more and more. When we are older, we are breaking down the bones more, but we are not replenishing as much. Okay. So the truth is, the thinning of the bone is basically an aging process of the bone system. Just every part of our body, we are aging at the same time. Bone also ages. And so another thing is that bone acts as a store for bone marrow, and as well as the bone itself. Now let's talk about bone marrow for a moment. The bone marrow actually is very important because it helps us to produce the necessary blood cells, such as white blood cell, such as red blood cell. These are blood cells that is built by bone marrows and stored within the bone itself. So a lot of times that's a very important function of the bone. The second function of a bone is that the bone itself, not a bone marrow, but a bone itself, acts as a storage unit or a storehouse for calcium and phosphorus and other minerals that is important for our body's function. Because at times our body might need calcium in the heart or in the brain area. And if you don't have enough nutrient that has calcium or phosphorus, your body will break down the bone and take out the calcium phosphorus store to replenish the brain, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make it clear that the bone is totally a living system. It's alive. I want you to think it's alive. It's not a static thing. Okay, it's not like, when you see a animal bone, you pick up, you think it's just a static piece of calcium stick. No, it's not. It's absolutely its own organ system. So let's talk about bone density for a moment. Bone density, and frequently we call it bone mineral density, BMD, basically measures, or what we're trying to do is measure the density of the bone itself. If you look under microscope, and obviously if you just look in your visual eyes, you see bone is just a solid piece of a bone. But the
Right.
reality is if you look under microscope, then you look at closer, my God, the bone is full of holes. Okay, it's got a lot of little holes. So the density is about how well these bone cells pack and how tight they are. So as the bone gets stronger, the bone gets dense. What that means, less holes through them, right? So as we age, a lot of time our bone becomes thinner or weaker or less dense. You start to see more holes through it. It's almost like you put a flashlight on the other side. The flashlight is just going through. You can see a lot of holes. Well, the holes are so small, it's not going to happen that way. But it's an analogy to think about. So BMD is in the old days we have a machine, and basically it's kind of like an X-ray machine where we measure our ankle in the old day, the heel area, where we see what's the bone density of the heel, and that we try to translate that into what a bone density overall in our body is like. But later on, we find out not as accurate, so we start to do the hip and the lower back, some commonly known as lumbar spine, as well as the hip areas. So we start to do some of these areas, and using the understanding or the results from the hip and the lower back area, we construe that this is a good representation of the whole body. And so we start to use that as a way to measure bone density. And the bone density comes in a report of what we call Z-score and T-scores. Basically, the score is relating to standard deviation. What a standard deviation is, let's say your age, you are 55 years old. And what's the average bone density at 55 years old, right? So you take that as a measurement of a standard health. So we call that standard deviation. And we look at where you are in your density compared to that normal average bone density. So if you are weaker than the standard, then you're probably minus. So sometimes you can be minus, sometimes you see minus 0.5, minus 1, minus 1.5. That's when you have osteopenia. When you have minus 2.5, that's when you have osteoporosis. So there are different definitions according to the bone density study. Now, why do we measure this? Is because if your bone density is less, then there is a less likely, if your bone density is not as good or more poor, you have more risk or more likely chance for fracture. Okay, more for fracture. The problem with fracture is that the consequences of the fracture can be all sorts of problems. For example, when you're fractured, you're in pain, you're in discomfort, you are bedridden, you are also not moving as much, your life energy goes down, your immune system goes down. It's very, very easy to get opportunistic infections, such as pneumonia and other infections that can basically kill you. So fracture is a big issue we're trying to, and especially as we get older, if you suffer from a fracture, literally you can't move that well and you become bedridden, and that is not a good thing. So we really, the key about the bone density is really a secondary to what's the primary goal, is to fracture prevention.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Yes, it definitely does. I would say to the audience, I don't know about you, but I already was just learning so much. And we have Leah, our Director of Operations, on Facebook right now as a moderator. You have a chat box that you can start sending in questions. And likewise, on our end with Zoom, at the bottom of your menu, you also have a chat box where you can start sending in questions. I would recommend to you that you send those over now, because that gives Dr. Dow sufficient time to be able to answer it, because we have a lot of questions tonight. And I just want to make sure that we cover everything for everyone, because this is quite a lot to absorb. And clearly, by the number of people that are already attending, it's a very important topic to them. So I want to make sure we hit on each of the points that you all desire. Dr. Dow, can we go back into, actually, let me back up a step, because it's one of the questions that individuals have, and then I want to return back to the topic of fractures. So first of all, in relation to osteoporosis, why are women more prone to get this? Is it because of our body frame? Or,
It's part of the body frame. It's part of, women go through a lot. They have pregnancies, their menopause. Woman's body is miraculous. In some ways, woman's body are designed to have a child. Okay, that's the design. You can call the creator's design, God's design, whatever you want to call it. Regardless, your body is designed to procreate. Okay, so it is in some ways your reproductive cycle, reproductive system is one of the most critical system of your body. So when your hormones are raging, or when your hormones is doing well, is cyclical, is secreting smoothly, you're ovulating, all that, it regulates your bones. It regulates your bone health. So in many ways, we don't usually see as much of a bone issue before menopause. Bone issue usually starts after menopause.
okay.
There are exceptions, okay? For example, asthmatic patient that uses cortisone or prednisone-based inhalers. Cortisone can actually decrease calcium uptake in the bone and can cause osteopenia, osteoporosis. So you may lose bone prematurely because of the drug that you're using. Okay, there may be some genetic situation where your bone is just weak because of your ancestry. So there are some exceptions, but in general, for most people, it's having a period or before menopause is protective of your bone health. Okay, protective of your bone health. And then after menopause, that's when the bones start to decline sometimes decline very drastically. Now, we do know that ethnic white women tends to lose bone greater. Their bone tends to be less of a density compared to the strongest density is African American or Black women. They tend to have much denser bones. You may say that, well, they are from Africa, they're hunters. Maybe their bones are just so much stronger in that sense. While that the white tends to migrate to Europe, and we tends to come into a place where maybe there's less solar, there's less sun, and our skin color has changed, our matrix has changed. We don't really need as much the melanin. So what happens is that our skin becomes more fair, our eyes, the light's in greater, so our eyes becomes more colorful, like blue eyes and green eyes. All that makes sense because when you have less pigments, interesting enough, pigment function as a matrix, as a scaffolding too. So a lot of time when you don't have the pigmentations, you obviously see the skin is looser, not as tight. So I want to tell you that it's not just the bone you need to look at. It's not just the bone, it's the whole system of bone. This includes your skin. This includes your fascia, includes your muscles, including your fat, lipid content, that tendons and tendons and ligaments all kind of tie in together to create this bone and skeletal system that is so important. So I think there are many ways that you can keep your bone health strong, which I'll talk about in a moment. So I hope that I answer your question right there. Is that helpful?
Oh, yes. I hope for everyone else too. I actually think it's fascinating to consider too the lineage of our ancestors and the communities that we come from around the world that basically made up our bone composition. And also, I guess that comes into play too. Then you have to think about like why in some societies are they taller, why are some shorter? And as you say, some were hunters and gatherers, some ended up creating more of a metropolitan environment sooner than others, that it reshaped us.
Yes.
Fascinating.
And yeah, and I think and I want to let everybody knows our bone is a on-demand system. Okay, on-demand system means the more appropriate strain or pressure and stress, we talked about before, stress can be good stress, okay?
Right.
The good stress that we have on the bone is actually going to demand our bones to become healthier. So having regular exercise, having a very active lifestyle, if you possibly can, is actually a way to reduce bone density loss. It's a way to demand your bones to keep up. It's like keeping up with the Jones. So I actually don't mind that you get competitive in an exercise with somebody as long as you don't injure yourself. But get into some yoga class, get into some weight bearing, weightlifting exercises, squats. Even if you can, if it's not hurting your joints, go for running, go for any kind of walking and hiking. Can all be very, very helpful. So I highly recommend these weight-bearing exercises and just keep your lifestyle active. Stop being so sedentary. Don't sit there for a long period of time. Our body's not meant to sit. We are really meant to be active. We are meant to hunt. We are meant to gather. We are meant to move. So that's why you should always get Chinese chairs for your family, because Chinese chairs made from hardwood is the most uncomfortable chair to sit on. So forces you have to get out of your seat. You can take a look at. I got Chinese chairs here. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so you see me like squirming around and moving around. It's
I do that
because
too when I'm over there.
absolutely uncomfortable.
They are.
It serves its purpose. It makes sure that you get up, get your butt going, and get you
But I
moving.
have to admit, it makes our posture better too, because it's so hard that you have no choice but to sit up tall.
Exactly. You can't even slouch. It's not even that comfortable to slouch. So
No. That's funny.
yeah.
Hey, one of the questions that just came through just on the topic of Chinese is they want to know, what about Chinese skin? What does it mean for your ancestors and how it shaped your skin and bones?
Well, it's, my skin is kind of, you can tell it's kind of flash out with the camera, but
Yeah.
it's olive dark skin. It's so funny in Asia. When you have dark skin in Asia, you're considered peasant class. You work
Really?
in the field, and so you got this dark skin. That's why your sun is baking you, blasting on you. But if you have white skin, it's so revert. It's like so wonderful. You're like princess class. If you go to like the Korean culture, oh my God, if you have white skin, that's like revered. It's like, this is what you want. Don't ever get it dark. Get it really white and really clean, no sun exposure. Ever seen one of my Korean friends going out hiking? She is covered. I mean, in the middle of summer when it's 90 degrees, she covers up because everything has to be like pale skin. That is like, best. The truth is, darker skin it's good if you're able to, because we all have our ethnic preferences. It's not something that you choose. I mean, you're born with whatever you're born with. And in fact, if you have fair skin, you cannot spend so much time in the sun. You're going to get skin cancer. Your risk for skin cancer is a lot greater. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be in the sun, and I think that's wrong to have that impression. Oh my God, I'm fair skinned, I should just stay out of the sun. I think that's totally wrong. I think there's ways to do this without creating sun damage. For example, I call this the morning and afternoon sun. So it's like, I mean, if you live in Los Angeles, okay, I mean, our sun is pretty warm, pretty hot. So I would say the morning sun is probably before 10 o'clock. You know, afternoon sun is probably after 4 o'clock, especially the summertime. Okay, so in the middle of the day, you don't need to be out there because that you're gonna get sunburn that way, and you're gonna get sun damage on your skin. I don't recommend it. Okay, so at that time, you should definitely still want to do sunblock. But during the 10 o'clock, before 10, after 4, don't do sunblock. Let your skin, allow your skin to soak up some sun ray. Don't have to be an extended period of time, but soak up some sun ray. It's warm around that time. It's not hot. So that actually give you some idealistic energy for your bones.
Yeah. And I remember you saying before that vitamin D is so important, particularly as women that were receiving that.
Right. And vitamin D is really not a vitamin. The truth is vitamin D is a form of hormone. And in some ways, I mean, there was a period of time we thought vitamin D is like a panacea. It's like, oh my God, is the drink of fountain of youth.
Not quite that.
Every day you be so youthful and wonderful, but we just, got rid of that whole thing. Vitamin D is a very important hormone in designing and building and replenishing bones. So you want to make sure that your vitamin D is sufficient. And a lot of people, when they're out in the sun in a sufficient manner, you can get good vitamin D just from the sun. But the truth is, we are modern people. Modern people have desk jobs. Even I have desk jobs. I'm indoor all the time, frequently.
Sure.
So on the weekend, I try to be outdoor as much as I can. But beyond that, you might need a little vitamin D supplement. And you can do a very simple test on your vitamin D in your bloodstream and see where your vitamin D is. And if your vitamin D is low, then you might need to supplement it. Now, I want to come back to this about calcium and phosphorus.
Yes.
Okay? So, if you imagine bone is made from calcium, so why don't we just take calcium, okay? Why don't we just take some calcium phosphorus and call it a day? Because then we just have large amount of calcium in our bloodstream. No, that's not how it works. The problem is that your body may not absorb it. Your body may not absorb this calcium into the bone at all. A lot of times it's not necessarily the amount of calcium you're taking. It's how you metabolize and storing the calcium into the bone. And some of us are just not doing a good job of doing it. Okay. And that actually has a lot to do with your hormone system.
Okay.
So a lot of time when a woman's hormone is way too low, men too, when our testosterone level is way too low, or when the estrogen level is way too low, what happens, that doesn't help our bones to blast, to structure. So in those situations, we may want to look at ways to replenish and nourish our hormone levels. Okay. And it's a balance. I mean, you don't want to do it so much that it could, especially people who has breast cancer risk, and that would create problems. So it's a balance. You want to take a look and be specific with specific patients. And so you could have some calcium supplement, but I wouldn't overdo it. In fact, there are studies that have shown if you overdo calcium supplementation, you might just increase the risk for kidney calcium stones, which is very painful and you don't really want it. So my suggestion is foremost, the very first thing is to actually look at your lifestyle. Make sure that you have a very nice, active lifestyle. Don't be a couch potato.
What does active mean to you? Can you explain to us?
You're moving all the time. Active means you're not sitting all the time. I mean, if you have a desk job, which a lot of us have, sit for 45, 50 minutes and get up for 10 minutes. Get up for 10 minutes. Make yourself go out and take a walk. Really take the break and come back. okay? Because that is actually very important. Make sure whenever you have the opportunity to walk or opportunity to move, allow yourself to do that. When you go to the market, park a little further out.
Mm-hmm.
You get a chance to walk. When you have the opportunity to lift something heavy without injuring yourself, like grocery bags, do it. Don't let somebody help you, because that person is not really helping you, because it's your bone, it's not their bone. Their bone probably don't need your help. Your bone needs your help. So lift those things,
Mm-hmm.
just like do it. Make it happen for yourself. Let me see what else. And what I do, I have a trick. If you have a desk job, just drink a lot of water.
Of course, because then you have to get up and go to the restroom all the time.
Exactly. So you have to go pee, you have to get up, you got to move around, and it's
Forced
all
activity.
forced activity. Forced activity.
And it releases any toxins from your body at the same time, so it's a win-win.
Hey, you feel good once you pee. Yes.
It's
Yes.
true. Okay, what else in our preventative plan? What else do you recommend?
Mm. I think the other thing has a lot to do with, I think the biggest risk also is in some ways body stature. Body stature. So
Meaning?
if you are very skinny,
Mm-hmm.
or if you are very overweight, both sides, what we call outliers, both sides can have problems. Okay. If you're very skinny, it means you probably don't have a lot of nutrient for your bones.
Mm-hmm.
Your bones are probably loose or not as strong, not as dense. If you're overweight, your bone might be quite dense, but it cannot handle your weight as well. Remember, our primary prevention goal is preventing fracture.
Right.
Okay, preventing fracture. So if you're overweight, you can break your bone easily too, because you can see what's coming, going, you're gonna trip. So, and if you're not active, you are not, your balance is off, you're gonna trip, and you're gonna create problem, and you're gonna fall, and you're gonna break something. So I think looking at your body stature is very important, making sure that you have a balanced, appropriate body stature, especially for your age. I think that's crucial.
I was just thinking as you were saying that, you were talking about it, if you're overweight, perhaps you're going to lose your sense of balance. Are there ways in us, particularly as women, where we can sense if we're starting to develop osteoporosis beyond what our weight might be? Like, will we sense something in ourselves, or do we literally have to go to a doctor and be tested to know we're starting to have issues with this?
A lot of times you don't, but actually you do.
Okay.
In Chinese medicine, we actually can perceive bone issues by how you feel. A lot of times when you start having chronic fatigue, when your energy is not as strong, when your vitality is not as strong, your whole system is weaker. So most likely your bone system probably going to be weaker. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that's one thing. If you have a history of anemia, that usually means that your bone might be also weaker also as well. So we take that into consideration as well. If you're somebody who has a very sedentary job, then you have a likelihood also have bone issues as well. If you're somebody who is not exposed to sun appropriately, you also can have bone issues. Obviously, if you're fair skinned and you are of a white female, you have a higher chance of risk. So these are some of the things that you look through. There's definitely things that you can look and see the risk factor. And there are sometimes, if you're osteopenia, osteoporosis, your joint actually aches more. So
Mm-hmm.
you have more joint pains. Okay. Now, it's not necessary every time when you have joint pain means osteopenia and osteoporosis. But the likelihood is that when you have, sometimes when you have osteopenia, you are going to get some pain and discomfort. And so that you can also see. But there are people who is asymptomatic. They have no symptoms. And these are people that should really do a bone density study. I often ask my patient, especially the one that has risk factor, to actually do a baseline bone density study at the time of menopause. Menopause is defined as 1 year without period. And that's the time, it will be a good time to do a baseline reading, see where the bone density is at.
Okay. And they go to their general practitioner to request that?
Yeah, you can. Actually, you can
Can we
in the
do it
state.
at the clinic?
Yeah, in the state of California, I would send them to a bone density study center. Uh,
Okay.
a lot of time an OB/GYN would do that work. They would send, I mean, there are specific radiology lab. That's all they do. They do bone density studies. OB/GYN is the one that would take care of that. Primary care physicians can take care of that. And sometimes if they are in a situation where there's no availability of primary physician or OB/GYN, I actually send them myself to do it. So it will be done. It can be done, and it should be done, especially for women in a menopausal time.
Okay. Thank you. You know, I'm conscious of the time and we have so many questions that if you don't mind, I'm going to start diving into some of the questions.
Go for it.
The first one is kind of appropriate to what you were just talking about. One of our attendees asked what herbal supplements can be taken that would be beneficial.
I think, well, first of all, we have some herbal supplement in-house that we have, such as bone health. We have a bone health formula that you can actually take. I don't know if you can actually see. We have several bone things that works really well. For example, if you have arthritis, you have joint pain, you should try our arthritis and joint formula. If your bone is weak or if you have some osteopenia and osteoporosis issue, you can take our Durabone and bone health supplements. And so those ones are available. But the most important is that you don't want to just take calcium and you don't want to just take phosphorus only. You really want to take a look at it in totality. Take a look if you're vitamin D deficient. Okay, you might need vitamin D. Okay, take a look at if you're calcium deficient, or you might need calcium and you might need magnesium, you might need phosphorus. So, or you might need a multiple mineral supplement, not just one thing, but you don't want to overdo it. Now, with that in mind, as a supplement, that doesn't solve all the problem. You got to make sure your hormone level is stable. You got to make sure that you are not suffering from the deficiency of hormones. How do you know suffering from that? Well, you're having hot flushes and night sweats that is very difficult to sleep, and having anxieties, or having dry skins or hair loss prematurely. These are maybe the signs of a hormone deficiency that need to be addressed. And so in those situations, if you don't have a breast cancer risk, you may want to think about possibility of some hormone supplementation. And if not, you can always go see a professional, like a traditional Chinese medicine professional, who can prescribe some Chinese herb that can actually help you to nourish your hormones. The herbs are not really hormones on its own. What it does is that they are plant sterols, and they actually help your body to give you the nutrient for your body to convert them into hormone if it needs to. And your body is pretty smart. It'll figure out that what it needs, and it'll convert only enough to actually replenish your body. So that need to be really prescribed by a professional. That is not something you should just take over the counter. Get somebody to help you to design a formula specifically for you. Now, having said that, again, I said earlier, you got to move. You got to have an exercise or lifestyle regimen that can be really helpful and conducive to your bone health.
Okay. Thank you. I have one more question from the same individual, and then we'll move on to some other questions. For those of you in the audience, please start submitting your questions. Again, if you're on Facebook, you can submit them in the chat box, and Leah is passing them over to us. And those of you on Zoom, you have the toolbar at the bottom, so you can be writing in there, and I see your questions coming in. So also from this individual, Dr. Dao, she's asking, also, do you recommend someone who is 66 years old and has osteoporosis of negative 3.5 to do hormones prior to trying meds? Or do you think I'm too old to start with hormones?
I think at a certain point, the hormone doesn't help us much anymore. I think the hormones might be more helpful in the earlier days, like around the menopausal time. At that age of 66, I think you need to do more herbal, and you might need to do some medications. Medication is not without side effect, unfortunately. There's definitely side effects such as sclerosing jaw issues. But there are now, different generation of bone medications that you can take. So there are times, I mean, in my shall we say, patient population, I have a whole group of patient population that I see because they don't really want to do any kind of medication. And when we are pretty straightforward. If this medicine is going to help you, you need to do a bone density study literally every year, and we can see if your bone is actually improving or not. If it's not improving, then you need to do the medications. So a lot of time I work with their OBGYN as well as their primary to ensure that they are actually improving. So that's one thing that we would do. Yes, at that 66 years old, minus 3.5, I think that probably is going to require, require herbal therapy, require probably a combination. I'm not so sure if medication can improve at minus 3.5 as quickly. I'm not so sure if it's going to go back down to minus 1.0. You might be able to help to minus 2.5, but you may not go back down to osteopenia level. But I think in that situation, I think she should really try both ways. She should really try both the Chinese medicine way as well as the Western medicine way, and at the same time lifestyle modification. I think you got to, at that point, you really need to, I say that throwing the kitchen sink at you. So you got to really do at all that's possible to help in that situation. Because at 66 minus 3.5, that's pretty severe for the age.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, and I just typed her a personal note to, yes, she said thank you, so she appreciates that. That answered the question. Moving on to the next question. What are your thoughts regarding the pharmaceutical drugs for estrogen-positive breast cancer? One side effect is bone loss. What would you recommend to help counteract the bone loss?
I think you are probably talking about different anti-estrogen therapies such as tamoxifen or Arimidex. Depends on when you start these medications. I think when you start medications before your menopause, it's tamoxifen. After menopause, it's Arimidex. These two obviously both has issues in the sense of side effects. And a lot of times there are medication that a lot of physicians would append to it. That means you would take in two medication, one for the bone and actually one for the hormones at the same time, anti-estrogen. You can definitely do it that way. I usually work with a breast cancer oncology specialist to actually work with a patient to help to strengthen the bone or just prevent further loss of the bone. And there's things that you can do herbally. There are things you can do through lifestyle modification, tuina, acupuncture. There's definitely things that you can do. I had a patient who had a breast cancer issue and taking some of these medication for 5 years. And I actually went out and helped her to, and I do this from time to time. I'm becoming this person who goes to REI with them and fit them with backpacks. I actually get now I don't try to go anymore because I know some people in REI and the salesperson would actually fit the exact torso length of the backpack for you, so it fits your body really well.
Oh, that's
and then
fantastic.
then you can start to weight bearing exercises, go take walks with water bottles in there, and it really give you a lot of weight bearing exercises. I think you need to do some weight bearing exercise. That's paramount. Running is a very strong weight bearing exercise if you can. But if you have bad knees and if you cannot run, at least you must do some walking. I mean, those are really strong weight bearing exercise. Put some weight on it, put some backpack on it. I think that would be very helpful. So I think that's the solution, is really to consult your oncologist and work with a TCM professional to see if we can introduce some of the herbs and some of the other alternative modalities to work on mitigating and preventing or slow down some of the side effect of the medication in bone loss.
Okay, thank you, and I hope that answers the question. Next question for you. Are strong bones the kidney yin, yang, or qi? If kidneys are weak, can bones also get weak?
Yes. In Chinese medicine, we have a system called kidney system. It's not the same as kidney organ itself. The kidney system in Chinese medicine, you can translate that into your endocrine system. Okay, overall, you can translate into your hormone system, endocrine system. If your endocrine system is weak, absolutely your bone is going to be weakened. Okay, so a lot of times the Chinese medicine point of view is what can I do to fortify and strengthen that endocrine system? How do I help your body in strengthening and secreting the necessary hormone that you normally secrete? So these are kind of things that we do to help the patient to achieve those goals. So a lot of times it could be kidney yin, kidney qi, kidney yang, and kidney yin a lot of time goes with kidney essence deficiency. So it could be all the different kidney deficiencies. So in Chinese medicine, the treatment of bone issues like osteopenia and osteoporosis, the foremost focus is always starting with the kidney endocrine system.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Can we improve our bone density in a particular area? So if there's, for instance, the example is your feet. If you've got the bones in your feet are prone to fractures, can you focus specifically on an area of your body and improve the bones in that particular area? I would imagine hips would be another big one for women.
Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. But it requires you to do on-demand exercises for that particular area. So, for example, if you have a lot of fracture issues with your toes, I mean, you basically want to stand and then do up and down, going on your toes and coming down on your toes, going down on the toe. I mean, coming down on your heel. So it's like lifting. Oh. You lifting your heel up and down, and do some of. I mean, actually, there is an exercise called bar method. It's like a ballet.
Yes, I do it actually too.
Right? So bar method, you could go up and down, but even in our age ratio classes, a lot of time we do a lot up and down. If you remember this exercise we do in age ratios, so we frequently get our people to do these kind of things. So a lot of times you can really get up on the toes and really work on these toes. So that actually can be very helpful. Hip fracture, a lot of time I think some downing and some yoga would be very good. Squats, strides would be very good. And also hiking would be very good. So these are some of the things that can really strengthen your hip. But I think part of the exercise as we get older is that we also have to stretch, okay? Yes. So it's not just like building, putting stress on it, but also we got to stretch our muscles, our tendon. What we are doing is when we are stretching, is that we are allowing the space to open more. And we allow the space to open more, we allow more blood flow to come in. So even if you put pressure on it, but if you don't have much space, things don't come in. So you have to open things up a little bit. So some of the downing exercise that opens the hip up, you can't really see right now, but I'm having, lotus position and opening up the leg, and that is really helpful. And then you can do a lot of different exercises. That would be very good. In fact, I actually know that locally there's like people who do stretching for you. I mean, there's a stretch lab. There's like different stretching outfit. You can go in, they can stretch for you. If you really don't want to stretch, if you want somebody to help you to stretch, which
I don't know that that's available throughout the United States, but
yeah, I think maybe it's an LA thing. But I think if you don't know how to stretch that well, go to a stretch lab for 1 or 2 sessions. Let them stretch you. You learn how to stretch. if you're somebody who hates yoga, hates Taoing, don't like to do a treasure, you just want to learn, like, tell me how to do a one step, 1, 2, 3. Go to Stretch Lab. Have them stretch your body 1, 2, 3, and you kind of figure out on your own. You can do it on yourself.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And we'll put, when we do the replays, we'll put links to some of the DVDs that you just mentioned as well. And ladies, I just want to say to you, I do yoga almost every single day. I hike, I walk. I'm a really active person. But I can tell you, just sitting here with Dr. Dao and sitting for so long, I get fidgety. I'm sitting in lotus position too. And it's like my hips, I just want to keep on wiggling and moving because it's just part of sitting so much in the day too. So it is a very, very important point to remember to stretch on a daily basis and to continue.
And you don't even have a Chinese chair.
And I don't even have a Chinese chair. I just have a hardwood floor.
Well, that's worse.
Okay, next question, because we have many more questions here. Hold on one second. I'm going to do one from Leah. It's not Leah's question. It's from the audience on Leah's side. Let me clarify that. Okay. What about the flexibility of the bone that helps to prevent breaks and the use of estrogen or lack of estrogen?
Repeat that one more time.
What about the flexibility of the bone that helps to prevent breaks and the use of estrogen or lack of estrogen?
Well, the flexibility of bones is, you're talking about flexibility of the joints. I don't know if you're talking about flexibility of bone. You don't really want your bone to be brittle, but you don't want it to be too soft. I mean, your bone should really be strong. So I don't know about flexibility of bone itself. I think the bone need to be strong. It's a flexibility of joints. I think maybe that's what we are talking about. As estrogen, well, estrogen can be protective of bone health before menopausal state. I think after menopausal state, after a certain period of time, that protective aspects of estrogen start to diminish over time. Yes, at the beginning, close to menopause, you can still use some of the hormones, especially if you don't have any breast cancer risk. You can definitely use some of that possibility to help you to protect bones for a period of time. But it's not a panacea forever. It is something that will help you to tide over a certain amount of years. But then you really have to really evaluate other ways to make your bones stronger and also adopt some of those things that we talked about earlier, such as lifestyle changes, supplements, and herbs, whatever you may want to do.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to be starting to wind down, so if you do have further questions, please start to submit those right now to us. I am going to turn to another question that was emailed in to us, which was about bone health in children. So for some of our audience that are mothers and are wondering how to optimize, I imagine, the bone health of their children, what do you recommend?
Well, one of the best things for bone health is eating well. Okay, and I do want to say dairy products is actually one of the most essential nutrition for bone health. You have to understand, dairy product is from breast milk, from the breast milk of the cow. Okay, so it's basically breast milk is highly dense nutrition, high density of calcium, high density phosphorus. It definitely has a certain amount of things that can help you with your hormones and growth. So I think when you're young, if you are not dairy product sensitive, I think a little bit appropriate amount of dairy. I mean, don't go crazy. I mean, I've seen kids that drink the whole carton of milk. I think that's just excessive. Okay, but if you have a good amount of a milk or dairy products, it actually can help you to build bones. Just don't overdo it. Just don't overdo it. I would, of course, go for free range. I will, of course, go for non-hormonally fed cow milk, and there's definitely some argument about raw versus pasteurized. Personally, I think both are fine. I'm not going to pick on that. So those are kind of things that you can do. Now, if you're somebody who's just dairy, you have a problem with dairy products, intolerant, so you may want to think about having more tofu, Tofu, like 50% of tofu is calcium. So that actually could be very, very helpful. There are other foods such as some seaweeds that have some calcium, but the truth is some of those other foods, the calcium is just not as much. So what the Chinese do is, as you know, Chinese don't really eat dairy products. Well, not the modern Chinese. Modern Chinese got spoiled by, you know, McDonald's or KFC or whatever that we send to them, and we have milk by carton, so they love their milk. I mean, the milk is amazing. When I come to this country, I thought when I drink milk, I thought I was drinking cream because
Oh,
back home, milk, if you're gonna get to drink milk, milk is a luxurious item to start with, and is diluted with water.
mhm.
So the milk is just like I thought, well, that's milk. You know, I drink milk occasionally. That's milk.
Mhm.
And then when I come to this country, when I drink milk, I thought, oh my God, this is cream. How could anybody drink such a thick, dense milk? I realized we are very lucky. I mean, we have very, very good dairy products. So, I mean, coming back to it, the Chinese, what they do is that they chew on bones. They chew on bone marrows, and that's a lot of calcium, phosphorus, and a lot of hormones too, bone marrow especially. And so, and I'm telling you, that's like every week.
Mhm.
It's not like, once a month. It's every week. I mean, the Chinese love ribs, so they would chew on the rib bones. They would chew the bone marrow, they break it up, and they eat the bone marrow inside.
Mhm.
So I think that is frequently a helpful way to also get some really good nutrition during childhood, also for the bone health. And also don't let another kid run wild a little bit. Let them go run around the yard. I mean, if you don't let them run around the yard, they're gonna break furniture inside. You know, that just let them go outside. I mean, they are meant to be children.
Yeah,
Children are meant to be running around. What somebody say children are meant to be seen, not heard.
correct.
I think that makes sense. Just keep an eye on them, but you don't want to hear anything from them. Let them run around. Let them run around. Let them be active. I think that's always helpful.
We'll let the mothers inner smile on that one.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to the end for us. So what final thoughts do you have for us about tonight, on the topic
I
for
have,
tonight?
I actually have one more thing because our primary prevention is really fracture.
Right.
Okay. So how do you really avoid fracture? Part of it is balance. Okay. Part of it is really make sure that you have good balance.
Mm-hmm.
Balance can be trained. Okay. So there are exercises, and I want to really tell people if you have balance problem, please take a Tai Chi class. Okay. Tai Chi Chuan class has been known to improve balance. It's a wonderful way to really learn balance. I have people who's 80-year-old, 90-year-old, they're doing Tai Chi every single day because it really helped them with balance. Why
Mm-hmm.
that's so important? Because you don't fall as easily.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your response can be really fast. You can recover very fast. Okay. So that's one. Second of all, learn how to fall.
It's
Okay.
a really
As
good
we
point.
get
Yeah.
as we get older, we just like so afraid to fall. But the
Right.
more afraid, the more fear you have to fall, you're going to fall.
So how do we learn how to fall properly?
Well, you need to go to a gym where there is cushioned, okay, so that when
Okay.
you fall, you're not going to break anything, and
Right.
you learn how to fall. There are actually proper way to fall. I mean, you learn how to roll down, you learn how to roll, you learn how to get up, you learn how to, you learn different ways, so you're comfortable. So you're comfortable to fall. You're comfortable to be on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So there are ways that I mean, it's hard to teach you right now in this podcast, but there are actually, if you go on YouTube and you can just Google search, there's a lot of people who actually teach people how to fall. Martial art practice, you're falling all the time.
Yeah.
You and the reason is because you learn how to fall and get up, learn to move, use your body mechanics so that you fall properly so you don't break your bones.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. If I may add to that, it's interesting because my father's going to be 98 next month. And one of the things is that they did teach him, because back when he was, I think he was about 90, 91 when he had to start using a walker. And it was very frightening for him when his legs went out on him. And by doing exercise, he goes and he exercises in the gym. He lives in an assisted living home. He exercises every day now because, as you point out, it's so important to be active. And they've pretty much been able to teach him how to fall and the proper ways of exercise for him in particular. And he barely uses his walker anymore. So I'm not saying every person can achieve that, but it goes back to what you say about, it's not age restrictive. Please stay very active. Please be monitoring these different things for oneself.
Yes. And even if you're on wheelchair, which I see people on wheelchair, you can stay active even on wheelchair.
Oh, absolutely.
There are ways that you can do when you're lying down on the floor, you're lying down in bed, you can move your hip, you can do all sorts of movement. There are no lack of exercise in bed. Okay, you can do all sorts of different movements. So the other thing is that I'm also a proponent of using tracking poles. Okay, so if you feel like you need something steady and but you don't want too much assistance, a tracking pole where, it's like ski poles.
Right.
And when I go hiking, I like to use this tracking pole. Number one, it saves my knee. Number two, give me a lot of more upper body exercise as well. But number three, I go faster because my hip it moves so much quicker, more fluid. I can squat, I can stride so much faster with the help of these hiking poles. So these hiking poles actually give you a lot of balance. So I highly recommend that too.
And they get them through, again, like or Amazon.
$30, $32 the last time I checked. But you can buy in Target. You can buy in, did I say Target or Target?
Yes, I love that. Target.
You get Target, I don't know.
Target, for the women out there, we say Target.
I mean, yes, it's $25 cheapest I've seen. Yeah, but if you want to get like, fancy stuff, titanium or carbon fiber, $100-some, go to REI and you can get really good stuff. So.
Thank you. Anything else you want to share with us? You're full of tips tonight.
Well, bone health is very important. I just want everybody to understand that bone is an organ system. It's not really just a static thing. And that organ system really, really listens to you. So you have to take the leadership, okay? Your bone is not a passive thing. It's like, do you remember in the old days, like with that game where like little like electronic digital pad, you have to feed it, you have to feed the pad. I forgot what's that called. It's not a Nintendo thing. It's not a Pokemon thing. It's something before that. So you have to
not Pac-Man.
No, not Pac-Man. You have to feed this little digital toy. So anyways, a digital pad, but it's almost like, hey, you know what? With a bone, you gotta feed it too. You gotta move. You gotta communicate with your bone health, and you gotta stretch. You gotta go exercise. You gotta go move. And besides, when you exercise, when you move, you increases your endorphins. You increases your neurotransmitters. And some of these neurotransmitters are substrate for hormones. They act and mimic just like hormones, and they can really help your body to be much, much better and more well. So that is some of the things that I can leave you with. So I'm really happy and really excited about bone health, and I really want everybody to have strong bones and healthy bones. The last thing that I really like is if anybody have hip fractures. There's too many cases of hip fracture that I've heard, that I've seen, that I've treated, that the outcome is never good. It's not good to have hip fracture. So let's avoid it.
Very important. And Leah just tossed out to say, I don't know if it was from her or from another individual, nanopet, is that it?
Nanopet is one of them, but there's another thing I forgot. My kid used to feed it. It's like, you don't feed the water, it's dying. Some kind of so funny.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dow, for being with us tonight. We had a lot of people attending. It was wonderful because you actually touched on several of the other audience questions too, so it was very helpful to them. You're back next week with us again. So the Tao of Life telestudy group is next week on Thursday. It's going to take place from 5:30 to
Yes.
6:30.
Yes.
And the book that you are all going to be doing as part of your study group is Attune Your Body with Daoin by Hao Chen Ni, your Papa. So yes, I hope you will join Dr. Dow again next week. And then at the end of the month on July 30th, we have J. Matthew Brand, who is the head of our Newport Beach Clinic, and he will be with Francis Lam, another of our doctors from the Santa Monica Clinic, and they will be talking about fitness gone wrong, ways to prevent injury. And they also contributed articles to the July newsletter that you all would have received. So we hope you will be back with us again later on this month. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the week. Have a beautiful summer evening. We are in full summer now, so make the most of it. And there's still sunshine out in LA, so please listen to Dr. Dow and go for a walk while you still have sunlight.
Yes, and thank you, Tiffany. I really appreciate it, and look forward to spending more time with you next time.
Likewise, thank you. And thank you, Leah, as well, for moderating for us. We appreciate it. Okay, take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye.